All right, let's get started. So we're going to do a little bit of recap here. On Monday, the basic thing that we did all day Monday was we covered the agreement of sale, and I'm not going to go review that, just to point out the fact that one of the things you want to do in your real estate career is you want to get to know that like your Bible. The understanding of the agreement of sale will save you a lot of time and trouble in the future, because once you know everything that's in there, and of course keep up with any changes that occur, which are always, by the way, in July. Any changes that are voted on at the board level, we do in January. We review them again in June and vote on things that we want in there. And then any revisions to the contract will show up on July. And our zip form program automatically updates anything new that gets added to the contract. Okay. But just so you know how that works. The only thing like I said, leaving off with the agreement of sale is if you understand the agreement of sale, you will save yourself a lot of time and trouble later. I'm not saying that it happens overnight. It takes a little bit of time to understand what each paragraph means. And I always assign a homework. Obviously, this doesn't get checked on, so it's entirely up to you. But one homework assignment that I always recommend is that you take the time, and not necessarily on one sitting, because I don't want you to go crazy, but take the time to read verbatim every word on the contract. And anything you don't understand, go through the contract and highlight it. And then talk to me one-on-one, and I'll explain what each one of those items means. And as you go through that and get more familiar with it, you will do you and your clients a great service. Second day, we went through what was called showing techniques. I have that up in front of us now. In that showing techniques, we basically went through and said some important things. We said that when possible, start at the front door, and then show the main living area first. Showing the main living area, we're talking about the area like the living room, dining room, kitchen, maybe a first floor family room. If you've got a typical colonial with an attached garage, you may have access to that from the first level. So whatever's on the first level, show it, regardless of the style of home it is, with the exception of a ranch, because everything's on the first level with a ranch. So show the main living area first. And then, of course, in part 3 here, show the privacy area next. Easy to do in a ranch. You usually have to go up steps in a colonial. And of course, in a bi-level, it may be along the same level, so forth and so on, but you get the idea. And of course, work in the important questions. Informally ask them how long they've been looking for a property, gives you an idea of what their level of intensity is at this point. And another way of asking that same question, but I do treat it as a separate question, is how soon do they need a place to live? Depending on those answers, you may determine whether you've got a property to sell or not, because they might say, well, what is your housing arrangement like now? That's part of where that question comes in. What are you doing now? Are you in a lease? Are you selling another house? Or are you going to sell another house? Maybe you have a listing opportunity. Then, of course, weaving those questions in, head to the basement mechanical area. I gave some details in that class on things to look for in the basement, really things to look for anywhere over the house. Point out upgrades. Upselling of the house is actually pretty important. And then you get a feel for whether they like it or they don't, okay? So showing the basement mechanical area and your knowledge of heating systems, electrical systems, plumbing. And I'd recommended for anybody that missed it that take a visit to Home Depot and Lowe's, or even some other high-end stores like plumbing sellers like that have showrooms, like Schuler has one, Essagenis has one, and get a look at some high-end kitchens and bathrooms and see what they look like. That way you'll be pretty informed when it comes to showing properties with high-end appointments, and those are things that are good to do. Of course, showing the exterior amenities, if there are any. Okay, so what do we have in the exterior? Well, we got the yard. We may have a patio. We may have a 3-season room or 4-season room, such as a covered patio or a sunroom, something like that. There could be a pool in the backyard. Obviously, that would be an added amenity that's in the exterior. But also pay attention to somebody that's spent a lot of time and money in landscaping. These are all things to point out. Is it a fenced yard? Is that important to your client? These are things to look for. And then weave in the question, by the way, have you talked to a lender yet? You need to find out whether these people are serious at this point. If the answer is no, they haven't, then you're going to want to make sure that they understand the importance of getting in front of a lender as soon as possible, because explain to them that no one's going to take their property off the market without you having some kind of pre-approval. So getting a good idea as to what you're looking for and what you can afford to buy are important things to do. Exploring likes and dislikes. Ask question number 4. How much cash do you have available for a purchase? How much do you have saved up? And I always put in a wording, including for your purchase, including your down payment and closing cost. Sometimes you get a look back like, what do you mean by that? Well, that tells me that I've got a buyer that probably isn't very experienced. And I'm going to step into the process and say, well, it's not just the buying of the property and how much you're putting down and how much you're financing, but there's going to be costs involved with purchasing a property. And good news is that cost isn't from me. So you don't pay for my services, the seller does. However, you're going to have things like appraisal fees. You may want to do inspections. You have to pay for those. And you have to, of course, set aside 1 year's worth of taxes. Part of that's going to be to reimburse the seller for taxes they paid. And part of it's going to be for the taxes that you're going to need to set aside for the mortgage company to collect if they're going to be, which they usually are in most first-time home buyers, if they're going to be escrowed in the deal. Okay, so you need to explain that that's part of the closing cost. Plus, you'll need to buy title insurance. And of course, there's recording fees because your deed and your mortgage get recorded at the courthouse. The lender will actually step you through all of the closing costs that are there. And lenders have some closing costs as well that they add in there, such as a commitment letter fee and things like that. So basically, you need to be aware that there will be some closing costs. I don't necessarily get specific with the amounts at this point, unless we start to dig into this further and they say, oh, well, I've got, $50,000 to work with. Great. Well, your closing costs on average will run between 5 and 6% of the sale price of the property, just as a rule of thumb type of thing. Kind of depends on what the taxes are like in that area. Sometimes the same house in 2 different counties can be taxed quite differently. So those are going to be some things to just pay attention to. So that's pretty much where we go in there. Here's the important questions again in a separate slide. I sent all this to all of you. You have these, okay? Just to go through some of the other slides we're going to do. Okay, I'm going to look at something called cap rates tonight. And you don't know what that means yet, unless you have done some investing, and then maybe you know what that means. But I'm going to explain a couple of things about that. It's one of the other things you're going to find that's a great opportunity being a realtor is that not everybody that's going to buy a residential property is going to buy a house to live in. Sometimes they want to buy an investment property, and you might want to be somewhat equipped when it comes to working with someone who says, can you help me find a rental property? Okay. Or maybe I want to buy a rental property that I can live in one of the units and rent the other unit. That could be a twin type of situation where you could buy both sides of a twin and rent one and live in the other. It can also be a 3-unit or up to 4-unit building. By the way, it can't be 5 units. Anything above 4 units becomes commercial financing. Not that you can't buy one and live in it, but the financing is totally different. The thing about caps, just to give you an idea, just a brief lesson right here and now, because this is part of what we're going to talk about tonight, and we're going to do a CMA, is the higher the return, the lower the cap rate. So low cap rates are what you want to look for. Somebody that's got a 8% cap means they're getting a 12.5% return. A 10% cap is easy to remember. It's a 10% return. 12% cap rate is going to be a lower cap, a lower return. 8.5% return is a 12% cap. So why is that important? Well, because depending on the properties that you're looking at, in other words, the location of them, the higher the value of that location, typically the cap rate's going to be, it's going to be there. Okay. The higher the return, the lower the cap rate. So it's going to be a higher cap rate in those areas. For example, and I'm not picking on any area, so to speak, but a city property such as an Allentown, Bethlehem, or Easton property rental is typically going to have a higher return and a lower cap rate. Partly because there's more of them, so there's competition, and partly because it's considered a less desirable environment than, let's say, somebody who can rent a single home on 2 acres of land. So that kind of makes sense. And like I said, I'm not picking on the cities, but if you get into Whitehall or Bethlehem Township, generally you're going to find you can get a higher return because tenants are willing to spend more money to rent a property there, maybe to send their kids to a school district that's not in the city. And here again, I'm not picking on school districts. I'm just saying in the real world, these are things that we kind of face. And it's one of the things that you'll kind of get aggressive of when you start showing those types of properties. Just to go through the rest of the handouts I sent, and we're going to talk on some of these later. So right here tonight, we're going to talk on steps to building a CMA. And that's kind of important because there is a way to do a CMA, and having this in front of you is going to be a help when it comes to understanding that process. Okay. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a minute. Okay. I have 2 of them here. Okay. So I've got one CMA for building a CMA for looking for rental properties. Okay, there's a couple of extra steps in there because when you're looking at finding a rental property, you want to know what the rents are in there. You want to evaluate the expenses so you can come out and figure out what the net income is. That's how you determine what the cap rate is. Okay, so we'll go into this in more detail. Let's look at the regular CMA for just residential is a little bit simpler. Okay, and as I said, we're going to talk about this. First off, you want to print a copy of the tax record. Once again, I'm going to be opening up the MLS and showing you where to find that, but you want to have that in front of you. If available, I always try to print a copy of the previous listing. So let me give you some background on that. The MLS system that we have today, although in a much simpler form, started in 1996 when the Allentown Board of Realtors, the Bethlehem Board of Realtors, and the Easton Board of Realtors all joined together to become the Lehigh Valley Association of Realtors. Okay. And then in 2000, I think 14, I was on the board at that time. We merged with Carbon County, added them to the things, and we changed the name to the Greater Lehigh Valley Realtors. And that's where GLVR comes from now. And for those in Pocono, at that time, we were trying to merge with Pocono. That didn't go together, but we're not done with that yet. I feel that that's still going to be something that probably happens at some time in the future because it was actually voted down by the membership at the time, and it lost by less than 30 votes. Okay, so there were about 750 participants in Pocono, and a little more than half of them decided to stay Pocono. Okay, but they may change at some point in time. No big deal. The thing is, the CMA procedure in Pocono is very similar to what you have here in the Lehigh Valley system. Okay, so printing a copy of the tax record, if available, print a copy of the previous listing. So anything that was listed with a realtor in, let's say, the last 25, 26 years, whatever it is, 27 years at this point, will have a history. You can print a copy of the previous listing. It's always good to do that. Okay, only because it may have some extra information in there that's not known today. Or it's also because if you find that the listing was on the market as little as 2 years ago and sold, well, then you kind of know. And you can also look this up on the tax record as well. So if it's not on the MLS before, the tax record will still tell you that. We'll go into this in some detail here, but when it comes to doing a search for CMAs, and we kind of touched a little bit on this yesterday, when it comes to just doing a search to find properties, the only difference with the CMA is you're going to be looking at a couple of different things. You're going to be looking at more than one status. So the status of the property is going to be the first part. Yesterday, we only looked at available properties. When it comes to looking at a market analysis, we want to, of course, look at available properties. We also want to look at properties that are under agreement, and we want to also look at properties that have sold. And on the properties that are available and under agreement, we want current information. So we don't need to put a time frame in on that. But on sold properties, we do. We don't need to pull solds from 10 years ago, for example. So I'll show you in the multi-list where you can basically do a search going back 6 months. Sometimes if you can't get enough listings, you can go back a year, but you never want to go further than 1 year because appraisers, while they will like to stick with the 6-month format when it comes to giving you an evaluation of the property, they will go back a year in the example of, let's say, not being able to find enough listings. This happens more often in commercial than residential because let's say you're selling a restaurant, you're not going to find that many restaurants that turn over that quickly. So if you want to get a better idea of what restaurants are selling for, going back a year is a better idea. They will sometimes go back longer than that to get a feel for it, but they won't use the comparables from 2 or 3 years ago. They'll just look at what has been the trend for, restaurant turnover. And that's one of the ways they look at that. So you can gain a lot of information by knowing where to find it in the MLS system, okay? So status is real important. The subtype, of course, and the subtype category, we'll explore in a minute, but that's just like we did yesterday when we just did a search. The MLS area, the same as yesterday. Number of bedrooms, maybe square foot, maybe lot size, and school district. I say maybe because remember, one of the other things I talked about yesterday in the general search was keep it as light or as simple as possible. If you can't find enough listings, then you can use some extra categories, and I'll cover that in a little more detail. I put in here, try to get 50 total listings. 50 or less is what I should put in there. The reason for that is because your market report will not exceed 50 listings, and that includes all the categories of available, and that includes also the available with contingency and the active no showing properties. It'll also, of course, include the under agreement properties, Those are there to give us an idea of what the current trends are like, even though those properties haven't settled yet. And the lion's share of any CMA you do will be the sold listings, because that's the one you're going back 6 months or a year. And so if you come up with your search and you get 75 or 100 listings, then you need to fine tune that a little bit. And that's where you may want to go in and narrow down the square foot or narrow down the lot size. You generally don't want to narrow down a school district. Okay. Hit results. Check all or eliminate NA listings, and I'll explain that as we go through it. Click this CMA and click pages. You'll see where we do that. So this detailed handout that I'm sending you tells you the steps to do it in the MLS, which I'll be showing you shortly. Enter the subject if available, open comparables, click CMA one-line report. I'll explain that in a few minutes. Click comparables and check all. Click finish. Okay, so that's a handout. I just went through it so you know what it looks like. I understand you don't know the steps yet, because that's what we're going to be covering tonight. Servicing the listing, I sent this handout to you. We're not going to talk about this tonight, but this is something that you're going to see next week when we talk about listing. So after you have a listing, how do you keep the listing? Servicing the listing is going to be important. So you already have that handout because I sent it to you. Okay. I also have a 10-step marketing plan, also going to be something we're going to talk about next week when it comes to marketing a property for the listing side. So I'm just giving you an idea of these handouts because I sent them all. I had them saved all as one, so it was simply easier to do it that way for me. Okay. And there's a series of questions you're going to ask in the listing presentation. We're going to go through that next week as well. And what do you want to move by? Similar to the questions that you ask when you're showing a property to a brand new buyer, you need to ask some of those same questions to a seller when it comes to them selling their house. Okay. And then, that's going to be it on the handout. So that's it. That's all I'm going to talk about on handouts now. Now we're going to talk. The only other thing we're going to talk about a little bit briefly before we get into the new stuff is just some of the recap from yesterday. So I'm going to stop this share. Okay. And I'm going to go to a new share, and that's going to be the MLS system. Okay. Just one of you can answer this question, but I'm assuming everybody can see the Greater Lehigh Valley Realtors MLS in front of you. Anybody chime in and let me know? Anybody?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, good. I
Yep.
only need one of you to tell me. As long as I know one of you can see it, I know all of you can see it. But sometimes this Zoom program gets freaky and it won't unlock the share screen to get the new share. So you have it. All right. So a brief recap of yesterday. Yesterday, we did a search to help a buyer find properties. Okay. We set up an auto email program, which is called the auto prospecting program. We did a residential detailed search. Okay. And yesterday we looked at available properties. We don't need anything filled in for dates because we were just looking for active listings right now. And we did a residential property. And I think we did a detached property. I think we picked, I'm going by memory here. I think we picked Whitehall, right? Yeah, but we did it by school district. Let's go by the school district. That's what I like to do. Whitehall, Copley. All right. And as you see, we got 11 matches that came up. Then we put in a price cap of $350 or less. When we did that, it dropped us down to 9. And then what was there? There was something else. We ended up with 8, unless maybe today is 9 because there's a new listing on here. That's possible too. Let's leave it at that. Oh no, we did put in 3 or more bedrooms, 3+ bedrooms. Okay. Now we're down to 7. Okay, so something changed. One of the 8 properties that we had yesterday on our list is now gone. And as you can see, nothing new came on the market to replace it. So there now are, hit results, 7 listings on the market. Okay, and that's what's available in Whitehall right now on a single family home on a single lot, not a twin, not a row home, under $350,000. So you can see. Not a lot. And here you do get a breakdown here before you actually open up the whole listing. These are all 3. Here's a 4, here's a 5, and here's a 4. 1 bath. Needless to say, that's probably why it's a 169.9 property. It's an older home. Here's a 2 bath. By the way, the number of baths here does not mean full baths. When you get into the listing, that breaks down the number of baths based on full and half. So if someone has 1 full bath and 2 half baths in a house, and I have seen that configuration, it's going to show here is 3 baths. It's not 3 full baths. You will get into the weeds on that when you pull this listing up. Okay. But yeah, most homes have more than 1 bath. Obviously, if it's an older home, it's going to be a 1-bath house was a typical thing. Your square feet is over here too. And of course, the starting date is listed here as well, the date that it's put on the market. There's other buttons you could click here that are on the listing. If you want the taxes, here's if you want the documents, here's if it's got a video. This one has a video. Not that critical. I generally don't send out the 1-line grid type of report. This is simply something you can look at to get an idea of the total number. All right, let's start over. Let's go back to search. And well, let me stop there. Anybody have any questions on that search part that we did yesterday? How to do it? I probably should have detailed a little bit more on how to set it up. In the search, when we did it, all right, let me go back, see if I still have it here. I do. Okay, so if I want to set this up as an auto email, if I go to save over here, click on that, it gives me a couple of different things. I can save this as a search. I can do a new auto email, which is what we did there, or a new speed bar shortcut. I don't even know what it does. I'll be honest with you. I've never used it. I mean, maybe you can play with that around that way of time. I've just never needed it. Okay, so the new auto email would be right here. It gives you the opportunity to send it to a contact you already have, or to create a new contact. It should have you BCCing you a copy of any emails that are sent. You have an option here to put another party in here. Subject can be whatever you want. I usually put in something like new listings from Tim Mahon. Okay. I one time put in there singles from Tim Mahon. Don't never do that. Okay, because I had people that wouldn't open my email because they actually took that the wrong way. They told me they wanted singles houses. Okay, and that's what I put in. Just put in new listings from you. Okay, then you have the option to go down here and change the language in here. Leave the standard portal language because this is a tutorial on how for them to use the system you're sending them. Make sure your signature is correct. It should always be correct. You only need to set that up one time. Okay, once you establish your membership in the MLS, you'll be able to set that up. And then this shows you the criteria that I used. Okay, and this shows if I want to do any extras, you can look these over in your own time and see if you want to use any of these buttons. But more importantly, when you set it up, I recommend against using ASAP. When you send the initial one out, it will go as ASAP, but then after that, it'll be sent daily, and you can pick the times it gets sent. I just basically do them all at in the morning, and it'll end up going at 8 a.m. You would hit save, and you're done. All right. Any questions on doing a search for a buyer? No? Good. No. Go ahead. Ask if anybody has one. All right. Let's start doing a CMA for the buyer. Now, we'll go in more detail on doing a CMA for the seller next week. And let me break down the reason why. When we're doing a CMA for a buyer, what we're trying to do is get an idea on average of what homes like the one they're thinking of purchasing have been selling for. Because buyers are always going to ask you the question like, wow, this property is priced at X. That seems a little bit high. And I might say something, well, hard to say. I mean, that's probably average right now, but I can always do a report to get an idea of typically what homes like this are selling for, keeping in mind that there's always going to be a plus and minus factor, because while I can sit two houses side by side and build the same house, just the difference of the lot they're on can make a difference sometimes in value. One lot could have a better view. One lot could be on a better street than another street. Okay. And I'm not saying better in the sense that let's say they're in the same neighborhood, but let's say you're looking at a neighborhood where you've got properties that are right on the outlying street of that, where that neighborhood begins. Well, homes on busier streets will generally not sell for as much as a home that's a block in or 2 blocks in, let's say in a development. Okay. If the end street is right next to the turnpike or 22, it's not going to go for quite as much money as the property 3 blocks away from that, because there's a noise factor involved. So the same house, the same year built, the same identical configuration, maybe built by the same builder with the exact same kitchen and everything else in it, can still have 2 different values attached to it based on those things. So every piece of real estate is unique based on the lot that it's on. But it doesn't mean it's not going to be close. Okay. So you get that idea, the difference there. Looking at a city property on Tillman Street, let's say, well, they're not going to be too much difference whether you're on the 1500 block or the 1900 block. Okay. Be quite a bit of a difference if they're on the 700 block based on the location. Same house, price range could be completely different. And as I mentioned, in a development as well. All right. So we're in residential. We always want detailed when we want a detailed report. Simple enough, right? If I'm just looking up a listing, I can just look it up by address, or I can look it up by the MLS number if I have that. And I use that a lot when someone says to me, "Oh, you sent me a listing this morning. I have interest." Well, dude, great. Give me the address. I don't need to go in there and go through the weeds. They give me an address. I can type in the address and go from there. For doing a CMA, though, we're doing this as an idea of finding out the unknown. So when someone says, I want to look at a property, here's the address, that's a known. And I can just go by that known idea and find it on the list. But when someone says, I'm looking at property X here, and I want to get an idea or a feel of what homes like this have been selling for, then that's what we'll do. And just for making it a little bit simpler, I'm going to keep the same criteria I did for the search yesterday. So let's say my buyer from yesterday is looking at these houses in Whitehall. Remember what we're looking for? We're looking for single family homes. Okay. So we want available properties. Don't need any time frame in there. Same thing with available contingency or active no showings. Active no showings will give me properties that may be on the market, but not ready to show yet. I definitely want to send them to my buyer and maybe get them in there as soon as that property is able to be shown. And then sold properties. What do I want to do with sold properties? It shows 0 to 180 here. That's what I want. So when I click this button right here, here's what you will see as your grid. It'll always be highlighted with today's date. If I go back on the double arrow button here, I will go back 1 year. Okay, see, now I'm starting at March 2021. Let's go back to where we started here. I generally don't go back a year. I go back 6 months. To go back 6 months, I go back to, let's say, March, February, January, December, November, October. Let's say middle of September. Well, it's April 1st tomorrow. Let's just say October 1st. Okay. All right. So let's go back to October 1st. So I go back 1 month at a time till I get to October 1st. There it is. Click on October 1st. Go back to today's date, click on that. This is all in the handout I sent you. See what happened here? Hit OK. I now have from 10/1/2021 to 3/31/2022. I have 6 months. By the way, if we were in March 15th right now, I would probably go back to September 1st. April 1st tomorrow, I would probably start at November 1st. But you get the idea what I'm talking about there. All right. So I don't need temporarily off the market. That doesn't help me at all. I do need under agreement, and under agreement is also current listings status. I don't need any dates on there. Everything that's under agreement that's going to match my criteria is going to come up. Everything that's active no showing is going to come up. Everything available with contingency is going to show up. Everything that's just available is going to show up. Everything that's sold and settled, I don't want them all to show up because that's going to give me 26 years of properties. So you see why we have to put a time frame in for the sold listings. And by the way, we're trying to establish a value for a property. The sold group is the most important group, because while we do pull the available listings, we do that to get an idea of what is out there right now. We've probably already done this with the client. When we pull the under agreement properties, we don't know what they sold for, but you'll see when I go through the grid, we can determine how long it took them to sell, how soon they got a contract on it, and we can get some kind of an idea as to what the market trends are like in this particular search. So I'll explain that in more detail when I pull this grid up. So we want residential, right? We want detached, right? We want it Whitehall School District. So we want Whitehall Copley. So we got all that. I got 136 matches. Okay. Let's see, what else do we want? So we did want 3+ bedrooms. So let's put that in there. Now I'm down to 118. So see what I did there? I eliminated all the 2-bedroom listings. I still have a good amount of listings here. So I may have to get a little bit more in the weeds, because remember what I said, I can't send a report for more than 50. All right. So in that particular case, let's get a little bit closer. Let's say the property that this is where I pay attention now to the property my buyer is comparing it to. You want to use the information from that listing, and I don't have one in front of me, so I'm just going to kind of wing it here. But you want to use the information from that listing to kind of narrow down the search, because while all of these so far are single family homes, and all of them are in Whitehall Copley School District and all have 3 bedrooms, they're not all necessarily equal. I could do all kinds of things with the search. So let's say the house I'm showing, or the house that they're thinking of buying, well, let's just pull one up. All right, I'm going to go in here right now and hit results. I'm only doing this for one reason. I don't have that many available properties. I got one that's active no showing. Okay. Oh, that didn't come up because I didn't put that status in there. Okay. That's why the 7. So these are the 7 are available. Let's say the one my buyer wants is Let's pull this one here. 3406 Brook Street. Let's click on it. There it is. I'm doing this to get some kind of an idea of how this compares to what my buyer is going to be looking for. So my buyer is looking at this property and thinking of putting an offer on. Brand new listing, 3406 South Brook Street. It is a 4-bedroom home. Okay, so it's already above what he was looking for, but that's okay. It's a 3-bedroom house. Notice it's a 2 full and 1 bath house. Okay, it is detached. We knew that. And it does list 2,462 square feet. And there's 1,000 square foot below grade. Okay, so above grade is over here. This is below. So it's actually got an extra 1,000 square foot of living space in it. And below grade square foot that's finished is 0. So this is unfinished space. Okay, which is good to know. All right. And what else do we want to know on this property? Well, the acreage would be important too. So basically this property is on a 12,598 square foot. Here's a little cheat trick I'm going to give you right now. Okay. Tells you it's on 0.289 acres, but just for your own benefit. If you remember from real estate school that they told you that an acre was 43,560 square feet. If you want to give yourself a general rule of thumb method to kind of remember for comparison, knock that down or round that down to 40,000 square feet. And roughly every 10,000 square feet is roughly a 1/4 acre. It's actually slightly less, but it's roughly a 1/4 acre. So if you see something that's 10,000 square feet, then you know you got slightly less than a 1/4 acre of land. You got 20,000 square feet, you got roughly a 1/2 acre. Okay, so when I see a property that they show the square feet is 12,598 like this, I tell them, well, you've got slightly more than you know, hold on, lot square feet. 0.28. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. All right, so you got 12,598 square feet. You've got roughly a 1/4 acre. A 1/4 would be 0.25. It's slightly over that at 0.289, as you can see. Okay, just a rule of thumb that might help you in the future. Round that down so at a quick glance, you can get from the square feet, you can get an idea roughly of that lot size. Okay. What's a state property? That's not important to us here. That's pretty much probably all we need. So we know we got a property on roughly a 1/4 acre land. Oh, let's see. The year built on this is 1991. Okay, so all right, so we know we've got a house that's a bit more modern. Okay, on with about 2,400, almost 2,500 square foot of living space, 1,000 square foot below grade, basement not finished. Okay, and what else would be helpful to know? There's an attached 2-car garage. Okay. Okay. That pretty much tells me all I need to know. All right. Now, let's go back to our market report. So I'm going to hit the back button here. Let's go back. Yeah, back to criteria. All right. So here we are back on our search. Okay. I now have an idea of the offer my buyer wants to write on this property here. And now I've done this market analysis. I still have 118 matches. And keep in mind, all I looked at were available listings. Let's get some historical data here so we can kind of fine tune this. So the buyer is looking at this property and we know that it has 3 baths. So, okay, let's plug in 3 here and put plus, because we wouldn't want to eliminate something that was even better than the property we're looking at, but we don't want to go less than that. Bedrooms, we were interested in 3+ bedrooms. That particular one had 4, but I don't want to make that the starting point for this because I'm not going to have enough listings in my report. And you'll see just by putting in those 3 bedrooms, I now have 34 listings. I'm already less than 50. Do I need any additional criteria here? I really don't at this point. So I'm going to go with this report and hit results. And now you can take a look and you can kind of see that based on these results, I've got available no showings. I got sold listings. I got more than 1 page, which you will. These are the under agreement properties here. Now, what do I do with this report? This is hieroglyphics to me at this point. Well, I got to put this in some kind of a format that I can interpret. So what do we do? And this is on the handout I gave you. Click all. If you don't click all, you won't be able to create a report. Notice now all these buttons are highlighted. Okay, hit CMA. Now, in that CMA, I can go in here and hit pages. It also gave me the chance to put the contact information here if I wanted to email us. I generally don't. I present CMAs in person, but I could email it to a buyer. Now, all I need here, there's a lot of stuff you can put in here. You don't need most of it. What you need is this stuff right here, comparables. And all the styles of comparables will show up right here in this report. I can hit a subject property. So I could take the property that I'm looking for and insert the multi-list here. I generally do that for listings. I don't need to do it for sale. So go to comparables. There's all the comparables. Don't forget to do this. You have to click all again. So I needed to click all in the beginning to open up the CMA box. But now I want to click all here. Why do I do that? Because I might find properties that are not appropriate and I may want to eliminate them later. But I never do that right out of the box. Now I do have an option here to compare pricing. I'm not interested in that yet because pricing was the thing I'm trying to find. So all I need to do is hit finish. Once I hit finish, I have an option of viewing the CMA, which is what I'm going to do. I can email the CMA. So once I've set this thing all up and I'm done with it, I can email this CMA to my buyer and say, I did a report for you. Here's the CMA, and then we can talk about it over the phone. Right now, you and I are going to do that. We're going to hit view CMA. It's going to generate. It'll probably be, let's see, with 30 some listings, it'll be probably like 40 pages or so. Wow, that was close. There's 39 pages. Okay. All right. So you got this opening in the front that gives you the breakdown of what this report says. Means nothing to me. I don't use it. Okay. There's lots of neat stuff that you can look at here. I don't use most of that. I do send it with report, but it's not what I'm looking for here. Okay. There's a portrait report. I'm going to give you a better one than that. There's a comparative market analysis. I'm going to go through that a little bit easier in another report. Brief summary of compared listings. Okay. And that summary basically is all right here on the averages. Okay. Is right there. Okay. Comparative market analysis summary. Skip past all that. Now, what I like about this report is it gives me a picture of all the properties I'm comparing to, including the sold ones and the available ones now. Tells you up top what it is. This one's an active no showing, so it's in a class by itself. The next available properties start right here. Some of these you might remember from yesterday, okay? But it also includes all the remarks, okay? And all the pertinent data is also over here as well. It doesn't give me a full look at that listing, but it gives me all I need for comparison. But I'm going to go one better than that. I'll skip past all these. I'll use this rest of the report if I have to go back and fine tune this with my client. But what I do, and this, when I email it, I always send them all these pages because it looks good. Okay. When I go to someone's house, I don't always print these out, but I will generally have my laptop or a tablet with me and I'll go through it with them that way. So all the listings are here in all the categories, but let me tell you what I use as my Bible. And I call it my Bible because this is the report that I use all the time. In fact, what I'll generally do is print a couple copies of this report. It's called the CMA one-line portrait. Should be coming up soon here. CMA Pro. Here we go. This is a CMA one-line portrait. You might want to take a note. CMA one-line portrait. This is your buddy. This is your Bible. This is going to help you when it comes to making a comparison because it's an at-a-glance view of this whole 39-page report. And I use this. We're going to hammer this really home next week on the listing side, okay? Because I absolutely use this in the house to try to determine what their house is worth and where they should price it, okay? But I'm going to also do the solds and the under agreement properties as well. So we have active with no showing, available properties. We've got the sold and under agreement properties, and here's all the under agreements. So all the totals will be at the bottom of each one. So you can see there's only one. There, where'd I go? Skipped up on me. There's only one active no showing. There's available properties is listed as 3. So the active no showing available. We got, you know, the under agreement property. Oh, there's 23 that sold. So I went back 6 months and there's 23 houses, generally speaking. When I say generally, because you're going to see where we explore the differences like theirs. Okay. All right. And then the under agreement properties, there's a total of 7 right now. That just gives you an idea. Well, the market's still pretty hot in Whitehall School District. There's 7 properties that haven't gone to settlement yet. And I'll know all the information I need to. So when I look at this report and I try to go through it with my buyer, I say, well, okay, so here's what we're looking at. Based on the properties that are on the market, as you can see, there's not much. But don't worry, that's not the important part of our information here. And there's Rook Street, of course, priced at $345. All right. Property is a 4-bedroom home. It's gives you the configuration here. The bathroom's 2,400 square feet. So here, one above it is bigger. This one below it is a little bit bigger. So this is actually one of the smaller ones. Okay. Lot sizes on here. Obviously, you can see the one on Main Street's a bit bigger lot. The year build is on here. Our property is 1991. This one is 1905. This one's 1988. So these two are close. This one's not close at all. Okay. This is the date the properties went on the market. Okay. What their status is. The price per square foot is a useless piece of information for this purpose. I'm not saying it's always useless. I don't know why they put this on the report, because there's always going to be an incredible amount of difference between the price per square foot when you compare when this house was built. This would be pertinent if I was just comparing new construction. I generally don't even mention it. Days on market or cumulative days on market, I explained that yesterday, is actually a pretty good thing to know. As you can see, there's not much time taking to get these properties under agreement. I don't know why this one on Main Street has 21 days on the market, and now they just put it back on the market again. But they did put it on the market at $329.9, and they haven't changed that price. By the way, if you see a property is on the market and the list price now is different than the original price, that means they either raised the price, which is not common, but it does happen, or what is more common, they've lowered the price. Okay. All right. Good to know, not the pertinent meat and potatoes I need. Now, before I get into the solds, I'll take a glance at under agreement properties. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for houses, and I have this all in my head now. I'm looking for houses that are similar to my subject property. Well, here's one on Highland Street, built in 1966. It's much older. It's a bit smaller. It is a 3-bedroom house, so it fits our configuration. And even the lot's a bit smaller than what we have here. But it's good to know they had it on the market for $297.5. They never changed the price. We don't know what it sold for, but they did get a contract in 6 days. Okay. Still not close to our property. Overlook, let's see. 1991 on 13,000 square foot lot is very similar to ours, except it's a bit smaller. But it did get a contract at almost $300,000 in only 4 days. 9th Street, built in 1957, so a bit older, but a little bit larger lot and comparable square feet. Not quite as big as ours. And it was on the market at $329 and got a contract in a total of 19 days. Okay. Carbon Street, let's see, 1,800 square feet, 9,600 square foot lot, older property, 1966. Believe it or not, they had it on the market at $350, and in 8 days they got a contract. We don't know what it sold for. And Center Street, 2,800 square feet, a little slightly larger lot than ours, but not huge. It's still under a half an acre. Same year as ours, 1991. And square foot is very comparable to ours. Configuration is the same. That property, as you can see, was overpriced at $575. They dropped it to $475. And I don't know what it sold for, but 13 days on the market. Well, heck, these numbers are all over the place. 2nd Avenue, let's see. Location is important. 2,000 square foot house, 22,000 square foot lot, built in 2004. So newer than ours. So we're not trying to compete with that. Went for $500,000. And Scheide's Road, that property was built in 1975. But let's face it, we're talking almost 2 acres of land. So it's a totally different animal. And they had it on the market at $620. They didn't get it sold to 175 days to get a buyer for the property. Long time, almost 6 months. But lowering the price to $599 helped. Don't know what it sold for, and we're not going to know that because that's not an important statistic for us right now. Just know that they all have contracts. So these are all success stories, but they've yet to be redeemed. Now we can pay attention to the sold properties. And here's one of the other things you'll notice about this report, and this is in all the categories. Lowest price properties will start in the beginning. Address, alphabetical order, none of that matters here. Okay. Sizing it by square foot, number of bedrooms, none of that matters here. What's important here is the sale price of the property. So the lower the price, the lower it'll be the first one. Okay. Because it'll rate lower to highest. Let's take a look at that. Now, Chestnut Street's not our property because it's a 1,700 square foot house built in 1948 on a slightly smaller lot than ours. But it's interesting to know that it sold in 5 days. They had it on the market at $244,300. It sold at $263,000. By the way, only the sold listings will tell us what the property sold for. And as you can see, this little statistic out to the far right here is very, very interesting. So this property went for 107%, 107.65 to be exact, percent of its asking price. That's the relationship between this and this. not this, although that number is the same in this case. But where you see the original price being different, this final statistic is only calculated based on the sold price versus the last listing price, which will a lot of times be the same number, especially when the days on market are low. But if the days on market are higher, like for example, this property down here in Mickley Road, well, this took 65 days to sell, not to settle, by the way, to sell. Well, why? Well, they had it on the market at 549 and didn't sell it. Once they lowered the price to 524.9, they got a buyer at 495. So this one was always overpriced. Remember, available properties, you can put any price on it you want. What it'll sell for is what's going to determine its value. Okay. So this only went for 94% of its asking price. What a shame. Had the realtor been knowledgeable, and I'm not going to blame it all under the realtor because maybe he had a tough seller. Okay. He or she, sorry. But had the realtor got the seller to price this accordingly up front, it probably wouldn't have taken 65 days. And if they'd have priced this property at that 524.9 to begin with, they might have gotten a better return than 495. I have no way of knowing this. I'm just giving you a hypothetical situation. Okay. Because the older a property gets on the market, and by the way, based on historical data, none of these properties are old. I mean, I remember markets where the average time on market was 120 days. It took 4 months on average to get a buyer for a house. That wasn't considered to be any kind of a taboo. In the current market that we're in right now, it's kind of like if you don't have this thing sold in a week or two, you're probably overpriced. Okay. So next other one on Rural Road took a little bit longer to sell. Well, they priced it at 475, and they then changed the price to 489.9, and then they got 490. Who knows what happened here? Okay, they may have done some repair that was badly needed, or it could simply be that it could simply be that someone offered them more for the property if they threw in this or threw in that. Hard to say because it was new construction, so that might have something to do with it. Year built 2021, and the 96 days on market may not be reflective of the real market on this property. This may have been a model home first before they finished it, and that may be why they changed the price, because maybe the buyer said, well, I'll buy the house, but I'd like hardwood floors here. I'd like you to put granite tops there, or whatever. Either way, at the end of the day, buyer paid $490 for it. So it still went for slightly over its asking price. Now let's get down the list here and see how close we get. So obviously here's another one on Rook Street. All right, but wait a minute, our property's on Rook, right? Yeah, this is on South Rook Street, built in 1991. Here's one on North Rook Street, built in 1920. So that really isn't a comparison. And it does compare. Well, it actually does compare in square feet. Lot size isn't too far off the mark, but the year is a lot. Still, 275 on the market, sold in 5 days for almost full price, went for 98.818%. So almost full price. Hillsdale Avenue, 500 or 5000 series is going to be cement. And by the way, I know by looking at the 4442 Phillips Street that's property is going to be in Egypt. 3108, that's going to be Copley or Hakandakwa or possibly Styles. All of those are in the 3000 series. 1109 Chestnut Street, that's going to be in Whitehall. That's going to be in Fullerton area. Okay. So you just know that by the addresses over time. So 1027 9th Street, that's also going to be down there. 1984 Linden Lane. Okay, that property is just off of Shott Avenue, still in not quite Fullerton area. Okay, that's kind of on the western side of that, coming down 15th Street. It turns into Shott Avenue. That's on that area, coming down 15th Street before you get to Shott Avenue. I see there's a development on the right called Peachtree. The one after that's called Village Green. That's where Linden Lane is, and that's actually pretty cool. So 5 days on the market, 325. They got 5,000 above asking price. Okay, that's kind of where we're seeing most of this fall right now. And that was on a property built in 1973, slightly smaller square feet. Let's go down the list here. 9th Street. Square foot doesn't. Let's go down. Let's go down. All right, 2390. Okay, Adams Street here. This is up in Egypt. 2396 square feet. It's a 4-bedroom like our one is. 10,798 square foot lot. So this property, our lot is 12,000. Okay, so not a significant difference here. This is built in 92. That one was built in 91. This is a good comp. So an appraiser is going to pull this and absolutely use this. This property was 9 days on the market at 364.5. They got slightly less, 352.5. So it's probably all I need to know. But since this is a lesson, let's look for another one. Let's see, square feet. Okay. 1989, close enough. 16,000 square foot lot, a little bigger than ours. Square foot, little bigger than ours. On the market at 350. They got 375. Okay. I actually have all I need to know at this point. Let's see if there's any more, though, that come close. Well, 2,395, close enough. That went to 435. That's way more. Okay. Slightly similar lot too. Where's it on? Brynwood Drive. Okay. Here's one on Shot Avenue. Generally, Shot Avenue will not sell as well because, once again, that whole thing that I just said before about being on a busy street. But this particular one, 1934 Shot Avenue, that was big, 5 bedrooms. Okay. And 5 baths, 3 full and 2 half. Square foot wasn't anything to write home about. Year built 1987. Lot size not super big, but certainly comparable to our property. They had it on the market at 369. I can't tell you why or how they got 450 for it. Someone paid them $450,000 for this home. Seems crazy. This seems like a fair price for that house. That seems crazy. So it went for 121%. I don't know. Maybe they had golden, fixtures in their bathtub. I don't know. Can't find a reason. Now, here's an example of why, when I went through that full report, if I want to know more detail, if it's really important to my story, it won't be in this case. But if it was really important to my story, I can go back through this report to where the listing remarks are and probably find out why that went for so much. Maybe they did whole new kitchens and baths and all that, and they just got their money back out of it. But either way, that's certainly a success story. Either way, I've already made my point. Let's look at one more. 2,600 square foot house, but that's on a much larger lot. I wouldn't use that. In fact, all the rest of these are on much larger lots, so none of those really compare. So what do I come up with as my conclusion here? So this one on Rook Street that we're looking at, which one was that now? That's 3406 Rook Street. Let's go back to that listing. It's going to be in this report anyway. This is the one my buyer wants to write an offer on. That's going to be way up here because it's available. Well, let me go back to that. Right. And see how having the pictures and everything in front of you can help you if you're trying to compare this, if people get in the weeds with you on it. My street. These are all sold still. Yep. Sold and settled. Sold and settled. All right, we're available. Okay, where was my property? There it is. There's 34 Rook Street, 3406 South Brook Street. As we said, it's on the market at 345. Built in 1991. 2,500 square foot house. Okay, keep in mind there's 1,000 square foot in the basement. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. It is a 4-bedroom house, which is good. A lot size being roughly a quarter acre, a little bit bigger. Okay, it's in Parkview Estates if the subdivision is important to know. What do I conclude from this? Okay. My buyer says to me, what do you think of the price? Well, there's one like yours that went for almost 450. Now, maybe they had some newer stuff in there and we can certainly look at it. But I think this house is very fairly priced. In fact, it is likely that this property will go for more than the asking price. And you've got some comparables in there that justify even getting as high as 375. So absolutely, I think this property is a good buy and a good value at $345,000. I think it's priced right. I think it'll sell quickly. I think it'll probably go for maybe not as high as 10% over the asking price, which would be like $3,500 or $35,000, $34,000 to be exact. But I do think that it's probably going to sell for more than that 345 asking price. That's doing a market analysis for a buyer. As I said, I'm not real in the weeds on this. When I do this report next week and you see me doing a CMA for the seller side, it's going to look a little bit different than what this one does right here. But I found all I need to know in justifying the asking price of this property. Why is that important to your buyer? Well, buyers never want to feel like they overpaid for something. Do you? Do you ever buy a car and feel like you got paid? I mean, right now, buying a car is like buying a house. If you're paying sticker price, you probably got a good deal. Okay. Lots of dealers are charging above the sticker price. Now, you can still negotiate a used car, but a nice one's still going to go for a premium. I know some car dealers, and I can tell you how that works. So, real estate, like the automobile business, is a supply and demand business. Almost anything in sales is. Okay. So the bottom line here is that right now demand is high and supply is low. So prices are what they are. But my rule of thumb on that is, and I tell this to my buyers, anything you buy, if you're planning on staying in it for the long haul, you really can't get hurt on the price. Okay. For example, when I say the long haul, minimum 10 years. Now, some buyers sell in a year or two, and you can lose money if you sell in a year or two. Because keep in mind, even if you buy the property, you're going to have closing costs. We've already talked about that. Let's say the closing cost does come up to that 6% of the sale price. Well, that's going to be roughly 20 grand on this property. Okay. So, you know, at $20,000 plus, if they're putting 10% down, they're putting 34,000, $500 down. Okay. So, I'm looking at my buyer putting $50,000, $60,000 out of their pocket to buy this home just to do a 10% down. If they can actually do the 20% and avoid PMI, then they're going to need about 100 grand to buy this house. 70,000 is a down payment roughly, and 20,000 or so in closing costs. So maybe not quite 100. So depending on the experience and level of your buyer, you now understand, when I go back to the question, well, how much cash you have available for your purchase, including your down payment and closing costs. I think if someone says, well, we got about 100,000 to work with, well, based on the price range you told me, you could probably get into something with 20% down conventional. And here's a couple of lenders to talk to. So the order of things doesn't matter. Getting the concept and the understanding, the big picture, if you will, of the whole process is going to lead you to becoming the expert that you're destined to be, because you're going to know this, have this at the back of your mind. You're going to have this knowledge ready to go to be able to answer those questions right up front. In other words, you're the expert, and that's what you want to be. It won't happen overnight, but at some point in time, and really faster than you think, quicker than you think it'll happen. At some point in time, you're just going to go like that. You're just going to hit it. It's going to hit you, and you're going to say, wow, I actually kind of know what I'm doing. It may take a sale or two under your belt before you have that confidence. But once you do, just don't get cocky, by the way. But once you do, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with. You're going to be able to go out there and pretty much demand your own paycheck based on how much effort and time you're going to put into it. And while we're let's playing around with that number, I mean, okay, let's a $345,000. Let's round it up to 350 just because it'll probably sell for that anyway. And it's an easier number for me to calculate in my head. So what's a 6% commission on that? Well, let's see, 18 and 50 is going to be another $1,500. So 19.5. That's going to be total gross commission on this property. Now, if you got lucky enough to have the buyer and seller, that's the total gross commission you're going to bring into the office. But you're probably going to end up splitting that. You might actually do a little better, but we'll get into that discussion later when we're talking about listings next week. So let's say it's a typical listing at 6%, is paying 3% to the buyer agent. Well, what's half of $19,500? Okay. 9, 18, 1995. Okay. 97.50. Okay. Pretty good. So $9,750 commission check coming into the office. Take off your portion you pay Century 21, and you're you know what you're making on that property. Not a bad day's work. Do that 10 more times. Let's say, I don't know what that rounds out to be, but I'm just going to take a stab at it and say probably you're going to be somewhere in a neighborhood of about $6,000 take home on that. At $6,000 take home, do that 10 times this year, and you just made $60,000 gross income from your real estate. Okay. Can you see yourself in a year or two making that 120? Yeah. Now, keep in mind, it's easy to play numbers with math, especially when we're looking at property in this price range, but keep in mind the average sale price. This is breaking down all the high ends, the middle homes, and the low end homes. The average sale price in in Lehigh Valley for a single family home, statistically, anybody have a guess? No one has to answer. It's $275,000. When we started before COVID, the average sale price or medium sale price was $210,000. That would be in January and February of 2020. Okay. Then of course we know what happened. We had a pandemic. Okay. And buyers came out of the woodwork to buy houses. That started as of May when we opened up again in 2020, and it hasn't stopped. Okay. Now interest rates have started to creep up a little bit. You may be aware of that. Okay. Back then you could still get, 2.75, 3.25, depending on your credit status. And if you were, doing points or not doing points, there were some great rates. Right now, you're going to probably pay 4%. It's going to be a good deal. I've seen between 4.5 and 5 being the average quoted rate now. Now, I can tell you, for anybody brand new in the industry, that is not awful. When I started in 1987, the rates were over 10%. When I bought my first house in 1977, the rates were about 7.5%. When I bought my second house in 1979, they were about 9%. Okay. When I bought my third house in 1983, the rates were 17%. Okay. In fact, when I bought that house in 1983, I took an adjustable rate mortgage hoping the rates would come down, which eventually they did. The historic rates we've seen for the last 10, 15 years are going to go away. But the rates that we have now are still extra special, juicy, great. And that's the reason why we're seeing what we're happening in the marketplace. Even with inflation, even with interest rates going up, this is not going to slow down for a little bit yet. Okay, it will at some point curb it, and prices may drop a little bit when that happens. But one thing's not going to change in the short term: the inventory, because builders can't build enough homes right now. And it's going to take a few years before inventory catches up, if it does. Okay. Now, if I was doing this on townhouses, there'd be a little bit more that we could find for someone. But even a townhouse right now, it's hard to find anything. I'm listing a house tomorrow, an older twin on Broadway. So it's in Parkland School District, just down the street from our Allentown office. Okay. I sold her that house for 138 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And I already did the market report on it. And I'm looking at probably putting it on the market at 185. Okay. And that it doesn't have a garage, but that's a great twin in Parkland School District. It's older. It was built in like 1945. Now the seller has done some improvements, kept it in really good shape. It wasn't horrible when she bought it. Okay. But it's still something that's going to go for almost 200,000. So it's below the average for the market, but it is a twin after all. It is on its own lot. In other words, there's a identical property next to it. So the lot's exactly divided by the common wall, but a twin. Now, it helps that it's in Parkland School District and in South Whitehall Township. That'll go for a little bit more. A twin in Allentown right now would probably be something in like 145, 150 range. In other words, what this property sold for like 8 years ago is what one will go for right now in Allentown. So that kind of gives you a bit of an idea. I will ask if there's any questions at this point on just this part, just on the CMA report that we did here. Anybody can chime in. Just unmute yourself. If you go to your right there, you've got an option on more to unmute yourself, or just unclick the microphone. Give you a minute to think about it. Okay, so no questions on this part. Okay, so we're going to wrap up here with doing something with investment properties. Everybody, I don't normally, or I hadn't in the past, included rental properties as part of the initial out-of-the-box training. The reason why I do now is because we have some new agents that start with us right away that have some experience sometimes in investment properties. And I thought, well, what the heck? It's still residential real estate, and it doesn't hurt to know how this works, even if it may be months or years before you run into someone. And I'll tell you, the first time I ran it, I sold houses when I started. That's all I ever did. Okay. And then one time, somebody that knew, liked, and trusted me because they had done business with me, had 3 rental properties in Allentown. And he said, can you, I said, well, yeah, I guess I can. Okay. And I said, Lauren, help. So I went to my boss. Okay. Still my boss. And Lauren obviously has a vast amount of knowledge in this stuff. So, even though he's younger than me, he absolutely shines when it came to knowing this stuff early on. And so he said, oh yeah, no problem. What you need to do is you need to know a couple of things. And then it's really just like selling a regular house. And that's what I'm going to show you guys now. Okay. So part of the handouts I gave you was explaining cap rates, okay? And I'm going to cover that in generic terms here in a minute. So let's get out of this CMA. I'm done with it for now. As long as you guys have no questions on the CMA, I'm going to back out of this. One more time, going once, going twice. All right. Let's go back to, you can always go back to your dashboard, start anything new. That's what we're doing. By the way, if I had to, I have a back button here. I could go back. Okay, but let's go here and do our search. And we're going to go to investment properties. See that? Now, sometimes investment properties will also be listed as residential. Okay, I'm going to do a quick look first. See what's available out there. And let's see, where do I want to look? Let's look for, let's go by school district again. Actually, I don't have that available in this search. Okay, so let's go by the town. Let's pick on Bethlehem this time. Let's say Bethlehem North. Okay, only 4. Okay, not much out there to look at in investment properties, but there they are. They come up as multi-unit buildings. Okay, so these properties, and you can see where the prices are. Let's take a look at one and see what it looks like. 605 East 4th Street. All right, $229,000. Remodeled 4-bedroom, 1-bath home in South Bethlehem. Wait a minute. I picked North Bethlehem. That shouldn't even be there. Yeah, 1815. So somebody played a joke here, and they took a property that's not supposed to be here. South Bethlehem has a different dynamic and a different price range, but somebody snuck this 605 East 4th Street in there. 605 or 306 East Broad Street, of course, is in North Bethlehem, Bethlehem North. Okay. And it's priced on the market at 245, but on the market 7 days. Real estate only for sale. Make your offer. Take a look at the great turnkey investment opportunity. Both units are rented to long-term tenants in place. Current generating $21.65 per month or $25,980 per year in gross income. Cap rate based on 2021. Operating expenses 7.4% of list price. First floor features a commercial retail unit with 5 rooms. Okay, so that's why this is kind of an odd one. 5, it's a commercial unit. By the way, it's still a 2 unit, so this can still go residentially. And if a buyer was buying this, okay, and if it wasn't fully tenant occupied and they wanted to live up top, they could buy this, live up top, still have that commercial establishment on the first floor, okay, and still finance this like their regular house. Because if there's one of those 4 units is commercial, it doesn't matter. It'll still finance like your personal home if you're going to move in. If you're not going to move in, it doesn't. Then it's still going to be an investment property loan. But price of 245. You can see some of the language I've been talking about here. Well, this guy gets it. Who is this by? Okay, girl. Stephanie. I've done business with Stephanie. She's pretty good. And yeah, she's got her homework done here on this property. Made some nice remarks. 2nd and 3rd floor residential unit boasts 2 bedrooms, possible use of a 3 with a front and rear entrance. There's a nice sized backyard for tenant use too with a residential unit. Separate electric meters for each unit. Typically that will be the case. And they have a 2021 income statement attached to the listing, which you would probably find down here under the view documents via Instanet. That's where we usually find the seller's disclosure, which, by the way, this property will also have a seller's disclosure. Let's pull one up. So these are the documents that they have attached to the listing that would be available for you to download and send to your client. And as you can see, there's a bit more. There's an income statement. There's a commercial lease. They put the copy of the lease right in up front. Good idea. There's your lead-based paint thing and your seller's disclosures here. And here's the other lease. Okay, so they have 2 leases listed in here. Very good. She did this the right way. So these are all available right up front, and that's a nice way to look at a listing. So they'll sell this one fairly quickly. Let's get out of there. Let's go back here. The listing's not going to look that much different than the regular residential, but when you come down here and look at the licenses, okay, number of units, this is different. So you'll see unit number 1 is listed as 0 bedrooms. Why? Well, that's the commercial space. There's no bedrooms there. No one's sleeping there. Okay. And it's 900 square feet and it's rented for $1,340 a month. Yes, commercials will always rent higher than a residential unit. Commercial first floor. Occupied, yes. Okay, that's what OCC means. Unit number 2 is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and rental apartments, by the way, typically 1 bath is the norm. Okay, you won't typically see 1.5 baths. You will if you're looking at some condos. Sometimes the rental condos will come up with more than one, because anything built modern has at least 1.5 baths. But these are all, I mean, this building was built in, let's see, 1900, typical of the city property. Okay, let's go back to this. Okay, so 2nd floor occupied, 2nd floor and 3rd floor residential unit. Okay. What else do we know about this property? It's got 1 2-bedroom apartment. The other one's commercial, public water and sewer course, central air via mini split on 1st floor. So they have air conditioning in the commercial unit. Obviously, the 2nd floor tenant can throw a window air conditioner in if they want to. And of course, they're all paying their own electric there too. Here's your total taxes, breakdown school, municipal, and county. And here's where you're going to find some of the expenses. Now, she could have done better here. She put the gross income in and she put the insurance in here, but I know there's other expenses she's not including in here. So the taxes, of course, are an expense. The insurance is an expense. Okay. The municipal taxes she has listed here, which is good. And possible finance cash conventional. This will typically not go FHA or VA or any government financing, but it would if the 2 units for residential, by the way. Okay. The fact that there's a commercial establishment on the first floor precludes it from qualifying for FHA or VA financing. Okay. Even though conventional financing as a residential property would be approved with the bank if you were going to own or occupy it. But if you're not going to own or occupy it, the only loan available for this property is an investment loan, especially because of the fact that you've got a commercial establishment. Now, how do we value this property? Well, it's based on the income. Well, at the top of a hat, assuming her numbers are right, and I always go through and I verify that. So if you take the rent and total that and times that by 12, that's the gross rental income that's coming in. If you minus out the expenses, which are going to be the total taxes, so you don't need that stuff. The total taxes are going to come out. Obviously, insurance is also going to come out, but there are other fees too. You got to factor in a maintenance cost and things like that. But either way, this is close enough to get some kind of an idea. She wants her cap to look as good as she can. So basically, at a 10% cap, okay, this property would be priced at about 258.6. Well, it's priced higher than that. Notice it. Okay. So this actually has a decent cap rate. Why? Once again, because it's in the city. In fact, it's not quite as low as that 12%, but it is lower than the 10, not by much, very close to the 10. So some factor of 9 point something is where the cap rate comes in on this building. Okay. What did she say it was? Cap rate based on 2021. Long-term lease, generating 2165 per month. Okay. If your gross cap rate based on 21 operating expense, she doesn't say what the cap rate is. Okay. Well, the cap rate is what it is, but it's coming in slightly below 10%. So it's a fairly high cap. Let's see how good the building looks. Okay. Let's look at it a little bit bigger. There we go. All right. So we're looking at the commercial unit here. Here's the half bath on the commercial unit. All right. About what you expect. Little desk area there. Okay. And nice. Okay. Not a lot of space, but certainly someone's running a business out of there. Oh, yeah. See, this was a residential unit at one time. It still has its kitchen. Sometimes that'll be the case. Yeah, it still has a kitchen. This could be converted back easily, but, based on its location, they made it a commercial unit. Zoning has to approve that, but someone must have got it done or they wouldn't be able to operate there. Yeah. Okay. I mean, generally speaking, it looks okay. There's a full tub. There's a full bath in this unit. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm in the apartment now. They didn't give us a. Yeah. So that's the commercial unit. As much as we can see it, it ends right here. Now I'm in the apartment. That makes sense because there's the full bathroom. There's the bathroom. There's a linen closet. That's a horrible picture. I wouldn't take that picture. I would shut this door. I don't need that open. I would shut this door and I would open this curtain. Now they did do that on the next page. Not this page, the next one. They still didn't shut the door. All right. Another one to look for is, let's see if they did that here. Oh, didn't see it. Hold on. Yeah, they closed the toilet lids. That's good. You'd be amazed at how many realtors take pictures with open toilet lids. That's kind of gross. Don't do that. Here we're back in the commercial. No, wait a minute. This looks like the commercial unit. Maybe it's not. All right. Maybe this is all part of the residential unit. All right. And the guy stores his bike in here. They all do that. Some flooring's in good shape. The house looks, generally speaking, in decent shape. The attic could stand paving, but it's just an attic. That's just the third floor. It is mostly finished too. There is a ceiling in place. There's a floor in place. So can't see from the picture, but if there's electric around here, there's no reason why they couldn't list this as residential space and rent it. If you want to use it for storage, fine, but you could easily make this a second bedroom. Mm-hmm. All right, now we're into the mechanical area. They're showing that there's 2 separate electrical panels. These are both 100 amp services. Wait a minute. All right, so see this right here? That cable is a 2-inch cable. As I mentioned yesterday, this is a 200 amp panel. The picture won't, I can't get a clear enough shot at the picture, but that's a 200 amp service there. Now this is probably for the commercial unit. Okay. And there's probably a 100 amp service coming in here. This box is a little bit rusty. Can't really see the cable coming in. It may come in from behind or it may come in off of this panel. I don't see it coming in on top. All right, looks all right. You know, what is that? Service, supply, sales. Okay. Couldn't tell from their business what to do, but yeah, that's what they have in place of a kitchen, by the way. Yeah, so part of where the kitchen was. Yeah, so this area wrapped around probably at one time and was the kitchen. And this, the front would have been, since this is the first floor, this is probably living room, dining room. This back here was kitchen. They left the water hook up back here and just put a utility sink in of sorts. But it's not huge, but you know, it is in the city. And once again, you can tell from that someone's running a business out of here. So there is that. All right. So that gives you a little bit of an idea how cap rates work. What you want to, and it's one of the handouts I gave you there, is that what you want to do is find out whatever expenses. So you always, you know, we'll cover this in more detail next week, but when we go on listing presentations, I'm going to have you go through a listing presentation based on a regular residential property, meaning, you know, someone wants to sell their home there. You managed to win the day, however you did it. Maybe it's a warm market contact. It's your mom, it's your brother, your sister. Maybe it's a total stranger. Maybe you picked up a lead from somewhere. Doesn't matter. You treat all appointments the same way anyway. Okay. I do the same performance on my, you know, my one man act show that I'm going to do here. The same. It's just like an actor in a play. You go to a play that's on Broadway, that's going to be on there for, I don't know, 12 years or something like that. You better believe that the actors are going to be doing the same show every night for all intents and purposes. And that's the idea that you're going to do too. You're basically going to be a play actor. You're going to learn your routine and you're going to use it over and over again to a different audience all the time. So no one's seen you perform until they have. Okay. So same thing with that play. Until you've seen the play, you don't know what to expect. Okay. And yes, you might be one of those diehard people that go to Broadway and say, oh, I saw that one 9 times. Oh, okay. So were there any differences? Subtle, not much. Okay. Because they're professionals. If you're a professional actor, you're pretty much realizing that while it could seem boring to you because you're doing this same thing every day when you do this performance, you're performing it in front of a different audience every time you do it. You have to adopt that mentality yourself for when you're going to go out there and go to work, because you have to understand that your one man act, your one woman act is a play, it's a show, but it's going to a different audience every time. So you got to be at your height of your best to be able to do that performance, you know, every time you go ahead to do it. And this is simply some of the tools to help you get there. Okay. So that concludes it for today. I'll open up to any questions. Well, it's not Friday yet. Ask away. Nobody asking questions?
Hey, Tim,
Yeah.
Bill here. The cap rate, I don't know, you must have discussed some of this last night when I was traveling, but
I didn't touch the cap rate at all last time.
okay. I was just curious, what does CAP stand for, first of all? Is that an acronym?
Yeah. What is it? I'll get back to you on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. And I see it sort of
capitalization.
It is capitalization against product, something like that. I'm not exactly sure of the acronym. We just call it the cap rate for all intents and purposes, but it's basically the number that you come up with based on the calculating the net for 1 year. In other words, let me go back. I'll tell you what, go back to that slide real quickly. Stop this share. Let's go to that other share, which is right here. All right. Let me get right about here. Okay. Cap rates. I didn't put the definition in there, but here's what it means. Okay. And the key is the bottom. The higher the return, the lower the cap rate. Okay. So a 12.5% return is an 8% cap. Okay. 10% return. Let's start with the 10%. That's easy enough. Okay. Because that I can do in my head. So let's say you got a building I'm just going to round off the numbers here. And these are not realistic numbers, but I got a building that is selling for $100,000. Okay.
Okay.
And I've got, it's got 2 units and the rents on it are, let's say $1,000 each. Okay. So I get $2,000 a month rental. That $2,000 a month is $24,000 of income a year. Okay. $24,000 of income a year. I now minus out the taxes. Let's round off and say they're $4,000. So now I'm netting 21,000. Let's say I've got $1,000 to insure the building. So I'm netting $20,000. Okay. And let's say I've got minor stuff. I got somebody that cuts along. I got somebody that shovels the snow, some maintenance things are built in there too. Maybe I have to pay the water and sewer because it's not separated, which usually is not. So even though you could get meters separate for gas and separate for electric, generally you can't do that for water and sewer. Okay. The only time you can get your tenant to pay the water and sewer is if you're renting a single family home, because there's only one meter, there's only one bill, there's only one person using that utility. But when you got water and sewer coming into a building and you've got tenants sharing the usage, how do you calculate who's using more than another? Okay. You just have to factor in what on average will that cost. And on average, the average rental unit is going to cost about $100 a month, or figure $1,200 a year. So I always figure, well, if I've got 2 tenants in a building, and I might vary this with this being a commercial at the bottom, but believe it or not, the commercial unit will probably not use as much water and sewer because they're not taking showers, they're not doing laundry, that sort of thing. But either way, I'll still calculate it based on the idea that I'm going to have at least $2,400 in expenses a year on that. Okay. So that now takes us down to what, 17,600 or something like that. Let's just round it out to the fact that $17,000 or $17,000 a year is the net income on the building. If it's $17,000 is the net income on the building, then if that building was worth a 10% cap rate, it would be worth $170,000. In other words, based on the income, this building is worth $170,000. Well, that may or may not be true. Okay. What's the average cap for that particular neighborhood? Is it more like the 12.5? Is it more like the 8.5? Okay. And I'm not saying these are the only cap rates. These are the 3 most common. You'll see some buildings where the return is 17%. Where is that going to be? Probably in the pits of hell. Okay. Because the problem is that in the hard to rent type areas, the building is not going to sell for near what the rental income potential is. But that rental income may come with more risk. You may have a lower quality tenant. You may have people that don't pay. It's going to be a little bit difficult to sell it. So, it's one of those things that will absolutely give you a higher return, but the value may not be there in the what the cap rate would be. Okay. And the opposite's true in the really nicer areas. Okay. So what you want to look for is if you go through and you pull active listings and sold listings in the neighborhood where you're trying to get an idea of the cap rate, go through the listings, mainly the sold, see what they sold for, and you'll come up with an average of what the cap rate is for that neighborhood. I happen to know what it is for the most part, but it does change from time to time. So once I know those averages, what those cap rates are, I can get the idea what's normal and traditional. So now if I'm showing a building to a potential investor and he says, what do you think of the price? I can tell him, well, based on the income, it supports it, but I don't know. That seems like a little bit of a high cap for this property. On the other side of that's also true. If I'm showing a property in, I don't know, Parkland School District that's a rental and it's got a really good return, I might say, well, this one probably is worth the value because while you own this building and while you're not going to make as much on it because the return is not as good, you're going to have a building that's going to be worth more over time. So if your tenant's paying enough that you've got a listing that's in the black and you're going to own this in 15 years based on the income, then it's going to justify the value because your property value is going to go up. Whereas I could buy a property in any center city. I want to pick on one city. I could buy a property in any center city area with good income, but that building may not hold its value 10 years down the road. Even though it's made good money, it could theoretically be worth less because of the neighborhood that it's in. You follow what I mean on that? So
Yeah.
those are things that determine that cap rate. So needless to say, what we try to figure out is, so in an 8.5% return, or what we call a 12% cap, we basically want to find out how long it would take us to own that building. Well, on an 8.5% return, the income from that building is going to put me at owning that building in about 12 years. Okay, see how it works the opposite there? If I've got a 10% return on the building, then I'm going to earn back the value of that building in 10 years. That's a 10% cap. If I get a 12.5% return on that building, I'm going to own that building from the rental income in 8 years. So obviously, the higher the return, the less time it takes me to own this building. Okay. And that's really what an investor is going to look at. When do I get my benefit? Because here I am. I'm Mr. Investor. I'm going to buy this property. It's $200,000. I want to know, is it going to take me 8 years to get my money back? Is it going to take me 10 years? Is it going to take me 12 years? That's really what we're looking at when we look at cap. Obviously, the higher the return, the lower the cap. The lower the cap, the more beneficial for my my buyer. Okay. So that's pretty much how caps work, and exactly what a capitalized cost, capitalization against something profit, I think is something where they came from. Lauren has it specifically in one of his commercial books. I just haven't looked at it for years. I don't remember what it means, but I know how it works. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions there? 6:26. We kind of got in where we wanted to. Great. So any questions? Obviously, you can always text or email me. I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. Just for the record, next week, starting Monday through next Thursday, we will go through 4 more classes. Monday's class will be the paperwork, as it always is. So that will be the boring one, unfortunately, of the week, but you do need to understand. And the listing side paperwork is a little bit easier than the agreement of sale, but you'll need to know that one the first time you go on a listing presentation of how to fill it out. And while that contract is only 6 pages and not 14 pages long, there are other things that you'll have in there. With the seller side, we do have to do an estimate of closing costs. Okay. And I didn't mention this week, but it obviously applies to both. There's a consumer notice we have to go through, but the contract class, I can barely get into any extra forms, but there are extra forms that we talk about on the sale of the property when it comes to the buyer side as well. Obviously, there's the buyer agency agreement. As I said, you should certainly win them by the end of the day to sign one of those. But if you haven't gotten them to sign one up to the time you get to writing up a contract, you must do one at that point in time. You can't say you're representing a buyer if they haven't officially hired you. All right. Any other questions?
Are we same time next week? 10,
yeah, we'll do this.
or...
I'm always flexible with that. I mean, I can work around anyone's schedule with notice. We came up with the 5 to 7, and this is actually before you were involved, Bill, because you had just come on board. But we actually sent out an email to the agents that were going to be coming up for taking the class and asked them what they wanted. We also asked if they wanted live in person, and I can do that either way too. Most got back and said they could only make the class if we did it virtually. So that's what we're doing. I don't have a problem doing it virtually. The one plus that does come out of that is we can record the class and save it for future posterity. So Lauren can use my image for the next 50 years after I'm dead and gone. That way, I'll be training agents. Now, I'm sure even my material here, which is really up to date, will be out of date in 10 years anyway. But either way, it's nice to think of being used posthumously down the road. Anyway. All right. So have a good weekend, everybody. See y'all back here on Monday, 5 to 7, same bat time. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care.
You're welcome. Take your time.